Welcome to, if we go to the first slide, please. Welcome to the webinar, Winning Work in a Digital Workflow. My name's Ian Godwin. I'm a former IT Director and Senior Partner at Foster's, founder of GodwinConsulting.net. Next slide, please, Lou. I also facilitate the Architects Technology Group for IT leaders, digital design leaders, knowledge and information managers. With me today, we've got Charles DeVoyle, consultant at Cubic Interactive, whose product Report 3 was developed specifically for the professional services sector within the AEC. And Matthew Nixon, co-founder of Flow10, the smart internet for architects, engineers and consultants. Next slide, please. So, winning work in a digital workflow. I just want to put in context that then we're going to talk about what is business development, why it's important, how can information management help deliver against the business development strategy, some tips and guidance from the panel, and then some concluding remarks. Hopefully we've got a few moments for some questions at the end. So, next slide, please. So when you work in a digital workflow, the context for project-based business, I think we really need to start with a vision of a practice-based project-based organisation, and the strategy that enables the delivery of that vision. As project-based business, it's often not an explicit vision. Vision and strategy for delivery can be gleaned through understanding the business drivers you have, your current competencies, the marketplaces you operate in, and how you might want to shift them in the future. Technology on its own is not a panacea, and it's very important if you're going to try and deliver digital transformation, then it's not just about the tools you choose to use, but also the processes and the people and the culture that are at work in your organisation in a holistic way in order to achieve that digital transformation. Next slide, please. There's plenty of definitions of CRM. I've chosen this Gartner glossary, but CRM is a business strategy. It should optimize revenue and profitability while promoting customer satisfaction and loyalty. CRM technologies enable strategy and identify and manage customer relations in person and virtually. And CRM software providers functionality to companies in 4 segments: sales, marketing, customer service and digital commerce. I think we'll primarily here be talking about sales and marketing. Next slide. There's a magic quadrant for almost every word that might come after CRM. So there's a real, in the big world of business, there's an awful lot of CRM products out there that have various strengths and weaknesses, but they're fundamentally aimed at generic businesses. Next slide, please. And, you know, in project-based businesses are not selling widgets. They're very much invested in managing future relationships for projects. And there are relatively small number of transactions in a project-based business that need to be, you know, well managed and relationships that are well developed. So it's not typical of the way that a CRM system may be that's out there in the marketplace. Next slide, please. But in terms of project-based practice, there are 3 fundamental life cycles of information in a practice. There's a project-based life cycle, the beginning of which is a new business pipeline. There's a people-based cycle, and there's the overall practice-based pipeline and the activities that go on in that world. Next slide, please. And you have an information model that is based on these 4 areas of projects, practice financials, people, and new business. But what you're ultimately trying to see, next slide please, is a single pane of glass with graphical live data feeds by role, powerful analytics for decision making, and integrated efficient processes that add value to practices' natural workflows. And today, whilst we talk about the overall practice management ecosystem, today we're going to concentrate on new business. and all those elements that go together in order that a project-based business can thrive successfully into the future. Next slide, please. But the CRM system is very much, it can be treated as a silo, but it shouldn't be. It should be part of an overall holistic perspective onto the information model of a practice. But you can integrate and join systems internally or externally, but it's making sure that the dog and the tail understands who's the boss in this, and that there may be compromises, but you've got to make sure that you're not working in silo-based information flows. Next slide, please. So, what is business development, and why is it important? So, what is your business development strategy, and how do you create one? Matthew.
Hi, everybody. Liam, next slide, if you may. Well, it's a big question, clearly. I think I'd answer that by trying to look at the very beginning aspect of the business objectives that you might have. So what's the business development strategy? Well, what is your agreed and up-to-date business plan? So first and foremost, get that sorted. And actually, it's tricky because you might find that some questions such as, why does your practice exist? What are you trying to achieve for owners and stakeholders? What are your core values, and who should you work with? And not necessarily agreed upon, or there may be a difference of opinion. So try and get some consensus there, and then work on, well, which markets are your niche? Who are your target clients and your target audience? You can then start thinking about things like your brand values, your brand communications. Are they reflecting who you are? So the sort of graphic I've got there is treating it a bit like a project, really. So, what is your business development life cycle? What are the steps that you might have as a plan of work? And I think the reason I've got that there is because time is so precious. You need to treat that as an action point in terms of moving around the resources and actually dedicating time on the right things and not the things that are sideshows. Because you might find that if you do a review against your clients and your partners and your projects, there may be some activities there that don't actually harvest, don't necessarily develop your central objectives. And the final thing I would just say is, again, where do you lack knowledge? There may be that there's certain people you could bring in who are specialists in a sector or a service, or within your leadership team, who could actually help you break into new sectors and introduce you to new people. So there's a few ideas there from me.
Thank you, Matthew. Charles.
Oh, thank you, Ian, and good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to add to Matthew's point that as a business, the Rapport 3 team have found that the greater interaction from virtual meetings since effectively this time last year, that we've been able to identify where there's not a clear strategy in place prior to putting a CRM system in place. But the fact that we can get groups together a lot quicker, and we can have a lot more interactive discussions across key stakeholders has enabled those strategies to be created and product configured in the right way prior to going live. So I suppose the conclusion from that, it's never too late to sit down and form and discuss a strategy, because it can be put together and implemented really quickly.
Thank you, Charles. Next slide, please. So we just want to go to Menti again and just ask you, how can you measure value of the business development strategy? So you have multiple options there. You can tick as many boxes as you like. It's really where do you see yourselves measuring value of the business development strategy? And please feel free to click away. I just need a refresh, Liam.
I think it's holding everything back, Ian, and it's going to bring it all in one go.
There we go. Some input from you. Thank you very much. Interesting that repeat business is up there. Market sector growth, profitability obviously key. Not necessarily developing new sectors as much as others. Okay, well, if we get the time at the end, we'll come back to that. And but that's interesting. Thank you very much for your feedback on that one. So next slide, please. How can information management help deliver against strategy and increasing opportunities and breaking into new sectors? Matthew.
Next slide, Liam. I think it's interesting you've put as a group that repeat business is the is the key. I think I'd agree. So it's all very well running into new sectors, but actually, I think we are good at this as a sector, by the way. And I think it's this R in the CRM, and we get asked, what is CRM? Perhaps less so now. Perhaps that's because it's such a commonly used acronym. But the R being relationships, I think, is what it should be about. And I think again we are good at that. If you think about the clients you work with, it's a case of doing more with select clients, and I think expanding relationships through them, because if we do a great job, if we build our relationship, it may be that they'll take us into new markets. This second point here about opportunity awareness, if we've got a good close relationship with a client, they'll hopefully involve us in their new ventures and we can be involved earlier. The other thing that I would suggest around expanding services, so we're all focused on professional services, construction, design, engineering, but I think it's true of any company, quite frankly, about expanding services. So, how could you cross-sell? So if you're an architect, you might want to think about, if not already, other design services, either through close partnerships or directly in other design aspects that you've not yet done, lighting, interiors, landscape, or graphics, etc. I think there's an aspect there of being aware. I suspect we'll come back to that sort of middle point around intelligence, but I think the thing I'm thinking about here around increasing opportunities and breaking into new sectors is around the data that you hold. And I think it's one of those aspects that you can go and source data in terms of general industry information around industry trends and sector analysis that could help you. And then, of course, you need to rely on your own data and then look at a decision to bid or a way of using that information to decide whether you want to make an investment based on the actual suitability and the evidence. Because, just a couple of examples. One key example in the last sort of few months has been that we've been working with a practice who it wasn't until they had information that they could actually analyse around a client that they realised they were spending tens of thousands bidding for work that they would never win. They thought this client was a great client and everybody spoke really highly of them, but actually it was a distraction, and it wasn't leading to any actual opportunities that would come to projects. So those are a few initial ideas from me on that one.
Thank you, Matthew. Charles?
Oh, thanks, Ian. Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of points about the knowledge and resources side and the risk management. It's just that we've been finding with feedback from our clients is how much thought they've been putting into this area prior to engaging and setting up a CRM system, and what we've been finding is that sort of the success of being able to focus on the key bits of knowledge and resource that are really driving the right results, both on new business and in repeat business, and then that's obviously very useful for when our team are helping to set up helping to configure and set up the panels so that it's easily digested by all the teams involved in winning new business, working on bids. And a good example is just to be able to just easily review previous activity and content on successful bids with similar clients. And the other one with regards to risk management, it's just, I suppose, all starting in that conversation in terms of sharing the best practice that's built up over the years within the practice, and then just being able to put in key stages that just get ticked off, or key documents get uploaded, so that can really get people to follow the best practices and avoid avoid taking on the wrong type of project, exposing the practice to too much credit risk, so that we can kind of follow the arrows down to really sort of delivering quality projects.
Thank you, Charles. Next slide, please. So how do I keep on top of my pipeline speculative work, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Charles, well, we've probably all mentioned aspects of this already, but it's a collective responsibility. Liam, if you could move on to the next slide, that would be good. So, we're in it together. So I think those of you who are here today are here because you know that business development is an essential part of a successful operation within the practice. But I think there's those, you're here, but some of your colleagues aren't, and I think they wouldn't necessarily see themselves as in sales, and they'd be right to think that. However, directly or indirectly, we're all involved in giving clients a good experience. We're all involved in feeding into the pipeline. So this pipeline thing is about opportunities coming in and eventually sort of narrowing down into successfully won projects of the right shape and size and risk profile. So a lot of this does depend on the type of work that you do. So for example, if you do PQQ tenders, I think Charles mentioned it, it's about having a database that you could rely on that would give you great responses to the questions. Well, I know for a fact there's many practices that struggle with that. They have to email around the practice all the time for the information, and there's a deadline. Feedback loops, I think, are key. And Ian, we've spoken previously about this thing about not just waiting until the end. Don't wait to the end of your project to get lessons learned. There should be collections along the way, which again feed the system. So it's about systems, it's about everybody being in it together. So that's cultural. And then it's about having an agreed process. Once you've got that, you can start to sort of actually lean on people and make things hopefully simple, because I think, again, that's so key, that it's got to be easy for people to follow this stuff.
Thank you, Matthew. Charles?
Thanks for that, Ian. Just one small point that I wanted to feed in on that, and it's very much something that's been fed back through to me by our operations team, who are very much on the ground, so to speak, in terms of helping our clients through this journey, and it's trying to make that transition from focusing and using tools for running busy, successful, profitable projects, to putting the time aside for the business development and having tools in the same place. And that's really made a big difference in terms of engagement and getting more people involved in the organisation to keep on top of these opportunities.
I think it's really important from my side to have an effective governance model for your information. You've got to know what your structure is and who's responsible for it. You can't just let that responsibility diffuse out so that nobody understands who's really got responsibility for these things. Thank you. Next slide, please. So getting the right information to the right people at the right time. Charles.
Oh, thank you, Ian. If you can go on to the next slide, Liam. just wanted to talk about it starting on the mobile. Obviously, we're all starting to get out a bit more now with more confidence and more meetings going on. The virtual meetings seem to be going at pace, but we find that so much more gets done on the mobile, and just having a good mobile experience where you can check the status of a project, look up a contact, review a BD note before an important meeting, or just following on from a networking event that you're attending while traveling back from work. Just the fact that you don't always need to open a laptop, and you can keep on top of those simple to use and simple to operate functions while you're out and about. And then if we flip on to the next slide, Liam, is just to show how after that initial dialogue comes from either a follow-up from a project meeting for repeat business or networking, communication tends to switch to email. So being able to have that central database of information that's available inside of your email system, so that you can have a real-time view of the latest contact information, any business development discussions that one of your colleagues may already have had, the ability to quickly add a BD note and assign it to a colleague who can follow up if you've got a few days up, and just being able to see from a busy inbox how many emails are coming in from people you don't already have on your contact management system. It's a really quick and easy way for everyone in the organization to feel that they're involved and contributing, so that everyone's benefiting from the latest contact information. And then flipping on to the browser view. So the ability of, when you log in the morning, as well as catching up on the latest progress of the projects that you're working on, being able to flip and see where your speculative projects are at, being able to look ahead to see not only how much confirmed work you've got going forward for the next 6 months, but how much speculative work is building up, and when those decisions are likely on those speculative work. And I think that we had a quick chat sort of prior to starting this session about filling in business development tasks and annotating those conversations, because sometimes just being able to go in and catch up on a conversation that you might have had 3 months, 6 months, a year down the line, and then that's available for everyone to use to get conversations going again. And then the final slide just wanted to show is how there's so many more tools available to everyone now. We're just sharing a Power BI slide, which a lot of people have got access to this as part of their Microsoft investment. But if you plug Power BI into the right intelligence on a lot of information that you're capturing and building up in your organizations already, it can do fantastic things. So here we're just looking about what's going on with all of the key accounts. So you can really sort of hone in on maybe the clients are generating 80% of your revenue, and then you can have a really good view in terms of how much business you're making, but also what new opportunities are coming off the back of those key accounts.
Thank you, Charles. Matthew.
Yeah, I think the awareness of what constitutes valuable quality information is probably important here. So having somebody within your company, your practice, who's able to identify that type of information that the partners, directors, the project leads, the people who are involved in client management can actually leverage. So if you can move on slide, Liam. I think that, this is this topic, the question being, how do we get the right information to the right people at the right time, is absolutely central to Flow 10 and what we're about. And I think it is about combining knowledge and process, and being aware that there's lots of information that can support business development. It could be as simple as I need to get my hands on a particular template document, through to I want to know everything there is to know about a client. So we get into this aspect of, from a systems terminology, something called a landing page. So a lot of this thing about I'm landing on a particular topic, i.e. a particular opportunity or a particular client. What do I need to know? And equally, I think that's true to the individual as well. It's what do I need to know and what do I need to do? Because it's quite hard for people, especially as there are lots of different systems out there, in knowing what's aware. So I think lots of helpful tools on the out in the market, but it's also about somebody being able to search what exists and also have automatic workflow process to help people. So I think actually the next slide, Liam, is a little example of how, for clients we're working with, they're trying to have a scenario in which it tells somebody there's a bid proposal submission, in this case I think Jane, but give Jane some supporting evidence, supporting information, link it into the databases that perhaps might give the answers, or link it into some guidance notes so that people are aware of what good looks like, so you can help them.
Thank you, Matthew. Next slide, please, Lynn. So finally, what guidance does a panel have to find more time to deliver great projects and minimise losses, Matthew?
Just go in with your eyes open. I mean, do something. You don't want to have a paralysis where things don't move forward. And I think CRM, business development within your practice may not have moved forward at a heady pace. There's probably lots of systems that are being used, and people still have their spreadsheets and Outlook, as well as potentially a database. You want to try and drive forward a standard, but go in with your eyes open. So just consider, I think, Ian, you mentioned it right at the beginning, how are things going to join together? Because you can't just expect a HubSpot or a Zoho to suddenly link into your project system. It's not necessarily going to be possible. The other thing, just word of caution, is that some of these systems that you might go and get are free, but then suddenly they're very expensive, either because of the time it would take to get them configured, or their licensing model can suddenly ramp up if you want to use it, for particular features.
Charles?
Oh, thanks, Ian. Yeah, I got a bit of help from the technical teams in answering this one, because but they were really keen to for me to communicate the importance of clients getting their contacts organised early, and how much more valuable the benefit of having a CRM system when you go live. Spending time and getting all the information together and having a really good clean of that data, so that it's not rushed near the end.
Thank you, Charles. Can we just go on to the next slide? And the next one, please, Liam. So we're just drawing up towards the end of time, but what will be recording available, and there is a Flow 10 webinar featuring Scott Brownrigg coming up on the 18th of May. And what we're also proposing is a follow-up on this particular topic, to potentially run a round table if people are interested. And that would be June the 17th, hosted by myself. Maybe we've got a couple of questions that we could now just put in. I know we're right on the end of the time, but we've got maybe just a couple of questions that we can answer. So, Matthew, potentially for people who've got a number of different systems, how do you envisage that practices can effectively integrate business development workflows?
Integrating systems and workflows, was that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the first thing is make sure you've got software solutions that can talk to each other. So talk to the people who are providing the technology to make sure that it has an API, but go further, actually identify whether that is going to be able to join the other system. So you might have I don't know, a project system, a finance system, an HR system, and a CRM system. They may talk together, but it's a case of, again, identifying someone who has a bit of time who can actually make sure that they are going to connect in the right way and work through some of that. I mean, we within as Flow 10, you know, we're a small industry, so I think it helps if certain solutions are commonplace. So, for example, Microsoft Teams and 365, SharePoint have APIs. Rapport 3 has an API, for example, and it is possible to have things joined together, but they're just because something's on the cloud doesn't mean it does talk to the next system. So you just have to be mindful of that, really.
Yeah, and we did just have a question: how does Rapport 3 integrate with the systems? And I think you just answered it, Matthew, by saying that there's an API, and generally those systems work together. And most organisations also, most practice management systems also have data cubes, which you can then integrate effectively with lots of different data visualization tools, for example. So there's lots of ways that systems can integrate.
The only thing I'd add in is it's also just a working relationship, because ideally you have a software vendor that if the API doesn't do something, they're able to talk technical person to technical person about how to make that data flow work.
Absolutely, there's APIs and APIs, and you need a good partnership with your software provider in order to exploit the best of the APIs. Thank you, Matthew. Practice systems versus specialist CRM systems. Charles, would you have a view? I'm sure you've got. I know you've got a view.
I do have a view, but I think we saw from the first Menti poll is just how many different systems are out there. And I think because CRM is such a popular software area, and there's so many products that it really does sort of like accelerate great functionality and great innovation. But I think there's a danger on that side. So even though it's driving through forward progress, I think what we've been able to cover in today's session is just sort of like how unique some of the requirements are for construction professionals, the busy architect, the busy consulting engineer, and I think being able to have a contact system that can also be connected to important information about the projects you've previously done, being able to view live jobs along with speculative jobs does mean that there's a bigger value of being able to combine the two elements together to help all the teams make a contribution to winning work, keeping customers happy. So I think from a specialist like us in terms of practice management that does have a CRM, we're never going to be able to keep pace with some of those big software giants who come up with fantastic functionality. So we really need to add value in other areas by listening to clients and making sure that the interfaces are going to be simple and they're going to be used widely across an organization, and that's where we feel that the extra value can be found from a combined approach as opposed to going with a specialist CRM system.
Thank you, Charles. Matthew, how do you evaluate the cost and value equation of ownership of a CRM system?
The equation. Well, I suppose that suggests a sort of taking the cost of doing it from the benefits. And I think that the costs are easier because you think about the total cost of ownership. You've got the software costs, you've got the implementation and training costs, and you've got I think the opportunity cost, quite frankly, is being a key one of you want to get it right first time, because it could be expensive to redo these things. So I think the costs are a bit easier. You could do a list of costs. I think the benefits are where it'll be challenging, but quite frankly, I mean, what's the cost of not doing it? We know that there's going to be benefits of being organised, working better together as a team, being more targeted and having a more rigorous approach. So I think I can't give you an answer directly in terms of what's the sort of the equation, but we know that there is a way of structuring the work winning process. I think that's what this is about. And again, I think Charles, you mentioned it about doing it safely, the kind of making sure it's not done at risk, because we can all go and win work, but the wheels can come off because we haven't got the resources, or we haven't got our information in place to protect ourselves contractually, for example.
Thank you, Matthew. So I think, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of the webinar. As I say, the next step's still on the screen. We will be recording circulated after the session. There's the Flow 10 webinar featuring Scott Brownrigg on the 18th of May. And if sufficient people are up for a broader conversation on this subject, then I'm very happy to host that in June to take that conversation on to the next level. And with that, next slide, please, Liam. If you want to make contact with any of us, there's our email addresses for you to get hold of us. And thank you very much for attending. And we will no doubt see you all again soon at some point in the future. So thank you very much.